If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Also check out some of our other videos, like Ren's thoughts on Neo, or Sarcastically Explained, The Infinity Train. Whew, that was one hell of a record session. Hope I didn't flip too many lines there. Oh, still listening, are you? You're probably wondering how we got here to the back of the video. Well, let's retrace our steps and I will tell you the tale of this video through a flashback. Sarcastically Explained, The Haunting of Bly Manor. Because it's October and this has really been the only spooky show in my rotation and I wanted to do something for Halloween. And you know, Christmas has always gotten the most attention on this channel. The Haunting of Bly Manor is a show about the haunting of Bly Manor, exactly as advertised on the tin. But before we get into the story, I'm sure you've noticed that this video is a video within a video, and this is because this is a story within a story. A young American couple are getting married, and suddenly this mysterious English woman tells a story, which is slightly concerning when you consider she's on the guest list. Oh, but it isn't any story, it's a spooky story. We follow Danny, who's an American who moved to England to start a new life for some reason. That reason? She's being haunted by Discount Harry Potter. Ridiculous, I know. She heads to a job interview where she's grilled by Henry Wingrave. Oh, excuse me, Lord Henry Wingrave. I mustn't forget myself as a lowly colonial pleb now. Basically, she's interviewing for an au pair position. What's an au pair? Well, it's basically some French-appropriated term that means a nanny. Spoiler alert, she gets the gig, which of course comes with multiple catches. Well, for starters, the kids, Henry's niece and nephew, are orphans. And to make matters worse, Flora found their previous au pair dead. Face down. In the pond. Which in any day and age would require some serious psychological intervention and a strong support network. But where's the fun in that? Wouldn't be a TV show without at least a little bit of nurturing trauma. After a drive out to Hampshire, she meets the children. Flora is absolutely precious and must be protected at all costs. Which is what you think until you hear her utter her catchphrase.
How perfectly splendid.
It's not perfectly splendid. Okay, it was cute the first 2 or 3 times, but then she says it in almost like every scene she's in.
It's perfectly splendid. Perfectly splendid. Splendid.
Danny then gets situated in her new job as American Mary Poppins. She meets her coworkers. There's Hannah Gross, who is definitely not a ghost, and it's definitely not obvious at all, by the way, how she never consumes any food or drink. Like really, there's even extreme close-ups of the teacups, like they could not have made this more obvious. Alongside her is Owen Sharma, who serves as the in-house chef, town heartthrob, and pun master. And finally, there's Jamie, who is definitely not your stereotypical rough-around-the-edges Northern English girl. Now, if you're thinking this seems a little bit too mundane to be a haunting, the show quickly hears you and dials in the creepiness right away. To the shock of no one, turns out these kids aren't so normal after all. I mean, how could they be? Their parents are dead. Laura's got creepy dolls scattered around the house. Spooky figures come in and out of the background. And as if that's not enough, the kids then do their best to unsettle you. There's Flora's ominous warnings and little subtle looks over the shoulder, and then there's Miles' unnerving adult-like behavior. Oh, and they also locked Danny in the closet with Discount Harry Potter. In hindsight, that joke writes itself. And it was at this point in this scene, where after years of being subjected to shipping culture, I thought there was something up between Danny and Jamie. Still not enough for you? Well, here's this dude, Peter Quint, who used to work for the Wingraves. And he's stalking the house. Or is he? Well, he might be because during a game of hide and seek, Danny finds this picture of him and Rebecca Jessel, the previous au pair, which of course cues up a flashback episode. No, but seriously, there are more flashbacks in this whole ass show than an entire season of whatever shonen anime you're watching right now. It's the same routine that Danny went through. Only with a little more grilling because, well, Peter Quint is here. The two of them then embark on a not-so-professional relationship which is punctuated by jealousy and playing with dead people's belongings. Like seriously, that is really trashy. Oh yeah, but before that, turns out Owen's mom is dead. Now, this moment is cute for like all of 3 minutes. Because Discount Harry Potter shows up again and he is jealous. Engage the pensieve because we're going back for another flashback episode. So, turns out Danny was a childhood friend of Discount Harry Potter. Besides that being another anime cliche, there's only one problem. Danny is a little gay. It didn't happen all at once, but as they say,
It's okay. Sometimes gay take time.
And obviously, given the political climate of 1987, I think we can cut her some slack for not wanting to come out right away. Now, here comes the awkward bit. Turns out these two were engaged, but Danny then came out, and this was just too much for him to handle, and he opened his car door without checking his mirror, and... Youch. Then cue immense guilt and running away to England. Back to the present, Owen's mom is still dead and everyone grieves around a bonfire and downs as much wine as they possibly can. Jamie then gets the very bright idea of mourning those dead by throwing bones into the fire. Very Celtic indeed. Danny refuses and she and Jamie then confirm the shipping suspicion I had in episode 2 and 3. And it is quite nice, until this Count Harry Potter shows up again. Danny then chucks his glasses into the fire and that seems to be the last of him. Oh, and there's also this super scary ghost that the kids prevent Danny from seeing, and it might be super important to the plot later, but who really knows? So what's next? If you guessed another flashback, you would be correct. This time with Hannah. Turns out she's having some weird warping back and forth in time, but eventually she lands on a time when she saw Peter Quint get killed and turned into a ghost by the ghost that Danny almost saw, which is incredible when you consider how the kids keep heading out there every summer. Oh, and it turns out that Hannah is actually a ghost, to the shock of no one, hopefully. Okay, well, Hannah herself, but yeah, that doesn't count. And after this flashback, you guessed it, it's another flashback. Turns out that Uncle Henry, too, is haunted. Honestly, it'd be a bigger shock to learn if you weren't at this point. This show's like a convention for haunted people. Now, it turns out Henry was banging the kid's mother, and is actually Flora's real father. And after a very stern conversation between brothers, the couple take off to India to salvage their marriage, because that's where you go to salvage marriages. And of course, we all know that tragedy ensues. Now, back to the present for once. Henry's still ignoring his guardian duties, because, well, the other him is telling him to. Turns out Flora is sleepwalking a lot and is having a lot of the same memory hopping that Hannah had. But before we get to that, Jamie and Danny finally do the deed. A feels-good moment, except Danny then finds out there are more ghosts than just her ex-fiancé. Shame she knows too much, guess they'll have to kill her for some reason. You know, I'm not entirely sure about what this one is, even if Danny were to tell someone, who would realistically believe her? And what would Danny do with this info? Like, seriously, it's not like you can call the police, it's like, oh, Peter Quint is dead, I know it because, well, I saw his ghost. Like, seriously, if anyone does know, please leave an explanation down in the comments because I'm hella confused right now. You thought we were done with the flashbacks? Nah. Here's another one. Turns out when Peter initially got killed, Rebecca was naturally quite torn up about it. But after some trying, he finally got his ghost mechanics down and appeared to Rebecca eventually to convince her to have control of her body. And if you've seen the movie Your Name, you must admire Peter Quint's self-restraint, if nothing else. Now, with this control comes the promise of being together, except it isn't because, well, Peter kills Rebecca while he's in her body. Because, you know, nothing says true love like committing suicide in your SO's body. Now, that's pretty bad, but to make Peter a bigger piece of shit than he already is, he doesn't even take the bullet for Bex. He conveniently ports right out of there before the dying part actually starts. Now, that plan was utterly selfish in itself, but hang in there because we go one step further. They're gonna take the kids' bodies. Thankfully, Rebecca hasn't lost all of her damn mind yet and holds off on doing that to Flora. Peter gets suckered into thinking that she has, and goes off to kill Hannah while Rebecca kills Danny. Once again, no clue why. Thankfully, Rebecca and Flora let Danny go, only in time to get choked by the Lady of the Lake, aka the spooky ghost that we keep seeing. Ugh. I really can't do this joke anymore. It's a flashback episode with the story of the Lady of the Lake, the manor, and all that jazz. Now back to the present, Flora tries to sacrifice herself for Danny. Hannah sacrifices herself for Owen. Oh yeah, that was a thing, by the way. But thankfully, Danny finds a loophole by using the same merging technique that Peter used on Miles. Now with Viola subdued, all the other ghosts leave the mortal world and everything's happily ever after. Owen's got a restaurant, Flora and Miles lose all that trauma, and Jamie and Danny end up together in America. Well, actually not together because gay marriage wouldn't be legal until 2015 in America. But still, we get our wholesome moment and it looks like it's happily ever after. One problem with this, it's too wholesome. Turns out Danny holding back Viola isn't forever and she must eventually return to the lake, where she acts as a human sacrifice to hold Viola forever. I actually don't have any sarcasm for this moment. I genuinely felt bad for these girls. I can't even fully bring myself to blame Viola. She was a horrible person, but I don't think she could have foreseen how being such a massive cunt would have caused all this. And then at long last, we flash back to the present. Turns out the narrator was Jamie all along. Owen's here, and he looks younger? Henry's here, he looks older. Miles is here, he looks older. Oh, and Flora ends up marrying Mark.
Oh, hi, Mark.
No, but seriously though, I really didn't recognize that this dude right here was Greg Sestero until I was scrolling through the cast list on IMDb afterwards. And then Jamie waits for Danny until the end of her days. A tragic romantic moment that'll make you forget for a minute that this was a horror series. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Also check out some of our other videos, like Ren's thoughts on Neo, or Sarcastically Explained, The Infinity Train.